Welcome to Trauma, Psychedelics, and Buddhism with Karen Sprinkel, certified psychedelic guide, trauma therapist, and author of The Thriving Self. Drawing from over 30 years of experience in trauma therapy, embodied Buddhist practice, and immersive Eastern living, Karen explores the many paths to healing through conversation with Dharma teachers, scientists, and mental health professionals. Listen in and discover new ways of thinking about what it means to truly heal and to thrive.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Trauma, Psychedelics, and Buddhism. I am thrilled to have with us Machan Taylor, who is quite well known for her singing voice. But before she ever stepped onto the world stage with Pink Floyd, Sting, Foreigner, Pat Benatar, George Benson, Michael Jackson, and more, Machan Taylor was a little girl uprooted from Japan to a suburban American town, carrying the lifelong ache of not fully belonging anywhere. That rupture, combined with growing up in a deeply dysfunctional family, left lasting emotional wounds that shaped her sense of identity, self-worth, and belonging for decades. Machan spent years seeking healing through traditional therapy and other inner work. In her memoir, Naked Out Loud, she writes candidly about her practicing Buddhism and guided psychedelic-assisted therapy and how they helped her access buried childhood trauma in a way that conventional talk therapy had not, and how that experience became part of a larger journey towards healing and self-understanding. While her story is personal, her understanding of psychedelics and their benefits run deep, now having experienced 25 sessions. Wow.
It's not quite that many, but yes, a good
But a
handful
lot.
for sure. A good handful. Yeah, not quite 25, but
Well, you want to correct the number? What number is it roughly?
I think it's about a dozen. It's about a
Okay.
dozen. Yeah, over the years. Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing.
And really only a little less than that with a therapist, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, different settings. Yeah, different settings, but hugely transformative.
So, Machan, for me personally, you are the perfect guest to interview because you already have had a thriving life. I mean, by the outside world looking at you, you are this human individual that has had great success, can consider herself a thriving individual, very productive in the world, has already given back to humanity. And here you are knowing there's a deeper layer that needed to get healed, and had the courage to take yourself on those deeper journeys to therapy, and then to continue to know that you needed something even deeper, which was obviously the psychedelic work. But if you don't mind, if we can begin, I'd love to get into the Buddhism piece too, but if we can begin with that little girl that lived inside you all these years. And I just want to start by asking, how is she doing now? How is that little 6-year-old doing now?
Yeah, she's doing a lot better, definitely much more integrated and a part of me, a part of the adult me that didn't realize for a very long time that that little girl was kind of left behind in Japan and in a lot of pain and fear and very confused about, what happened. Um, for your listeners, the background is my mother was Japanese. My father was American military, and he was stationed in Yokohama, Japan after World War II. It's a very, very, historical, typical story. Post-World War II, there were a lot of American military guys that ended up marrying Japanese women. In fact, there were about 45,000 Japanese women that ended up marrying American soldiers and came to America. So my older sister and myself, we were born in Japan, but my father had trouble finding work after he decided to retire from active duty. And so we needed to come to America, and he was from Paterson, New Jersey. So we ended up getting on a ship, transported all of our belongings from Tokyo, or actually Yokohama, to San Francisco, and then boarded a train across America to New Jersey, which is where I grew up after 4.5. But I was 4.5,
Very
so it
young.
was very young. But, my first psychedelic assisted therapy session with MDMA was so powerful and so incredible because it took me back to Japan. It took me back to that little girl. And in fact, my book opens up with a chapter talking about that session. And, I hadn't realized for a lot of my adult life that I was carrying that wound of separating from my grandmother, my family in Japan. I loved my grandmother. I adored her and was very close to her when I was little. And I never got to see her again.
Oh, wow.
And I never got to see her again. My mother, only went back to Japan once when my grandmother was dying from stomach cancer. But anyway, that first session literally took me back across the ocean to Japan, in an incredible process during that particular journey. And it was transformative because for whatever reason, even though I had been in therapy on and off for years, I didn't really pinpoint that moment in time for myself and for that little girl, that was the original trauma of being separated from my grandmother and my family in Japan. Also, my first language, my first impressions of the world. I really did not make that connection of how deep that wound was until that first psychedelic-assisted therapy session. And it was incredible.
When that happened and that opened up and you made connection with this little 4.5-year-old that still lived inside you, holding this wound, did that first session help you heal her, or did it only open up the bridge of the relationship with her, and then you simultaneously had to do sessions after that to continue to heal her?
Yeah, I think it was a little of both. It was definitely so transformative to sort of crack open that place in myself. And it was like, it was the aha moment, of, oh my God, that is the original wound. That is the original trauma. And then, the traumas on top of that later with my alcoholic family and all the dysfunction that happened there. But yes, it took subsequent sessions, and then I was also in, regular talk therapy to be able to process, what had come up in that particular first journey, and then subsequent journeys. So yeah, as you know, it takes time.
Yeah.
It's not a one and done. It's not a panacea, but it is powerful work. It's
Yeah, thank
very
you for
powerful
mentioning
work.
that. Because, as a psychedelic therapist, I get a lot of phone calls for people wanting that magic pill session. And
Yeah.
and it's really hard to describe to them what you just said, which is that it is so much more efficient and rapid than talk therapy. It is profound, and yet it's not a one and done. You're going to
Yeah.
need a few journeys at least to
Yes.
really fully integrate. So thank you for sharing that part. And I'm
Yeah.
just curious about the language because you mentioned that everything was ripped from you, your identity, your sensations, how you orientated in the world, and language. And
Yeah.
how was your use of Japanese language before the MDMA journey? And has there been any shift with that at all?
Um, well, I was young when we came to America, so even though it's all I spoke, that was my first language, my father being American, and also, it was a very, very different time in America. There were a lot of discriminating feelings against the Japanese because the
Mhm.
Japanese were the enemy. It was
Mhm.
just after World War II. So, yeah, I remember, being in grade school and being called a Jap and all that stuff. And, it happens, kids can be very mean, but children learn that kind of ideology and belief from their parents, obviously. So, yeah, there were a lot of discriminating feelings. My mother also experienced it. So did my older sister. So my father said, no more talking Japanese in the household. That was it. So
Wow.
he kind of cut us off from speaking the language anymore.
Wow.
Um, so I forgot a lot. But I did go back to Japan many times with different tours that I did. And it's weird because as soon as I would be in Japan, I would recall speaking Japanese, but it was the vocabulary of a 4-year-old. So it
Yeah.
didn't get me very far,
Yeah,
you
I'm so
know.
curious about that when you've returned to Japan. And have you returned to Japan since you've had these psychedelic journeys?
No, and I really want to go back. I really want to go back because, I have cousins, I have extended family that's still there and still alive. So, yeah, I'm due. I'm due for a trip.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be really extraordinary. I would be very
Yeah.
curious about what happens
Yeah,
with your senses and the language when you return. And
exactly.
Machan, if you don't mind, before we get into like further layers of trauma and the psychedelic journeys,
Mhm.
you mentioned that you were a Buddhist and you are a Buddhist and that your mom was a practicing Buddhist. And I'm
Mhm.
curious along your path in life, how did you integrate kind of your Buddhist knowledge of the Dharma into, your singing career, your healing work now? How has that shaped you or supported you or maybe not shaped you or supported
Hmm.
you?
Well, it's a bit of a convoluted journey with my spiritual path because my mother was a Shinto Buddhist, which is very common in Japan, Shinto
Mhm.
Buddhism. But because coming to America and because of my father, my parents put me in Catholic school as a young person. So in grammar school, I was in Catholic school. So I went to church. I sang in the choir, which is a big part of my musical beginnings, was singing in the choir. Um, so I had to study the Bible and had to study Catholicism. But at the same time, my mother was teaching me about reincarnation and and the connection to nature that the Buddhists so deeply revere. Um, so it was a very convoluted, sort of confusing journey in the beginning. Um, Later, after high school and in my 20s, I kind of went back to my Buddhist studies, but I studied a lot of different paths. So I was studying Tibetan Buddhism. I was studying, you know, different Eastern philosophies. And then fast forward many years down the road when I met Wayne Shorter, who was a revered jazz saxophonist, and I got to know him and his wife at the time. They introduced me to Nichiren Daishonin Buddhism,
Mhm.
which is
Mhm.
chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. So I did
Mhm.
that for many years. I chanted, and I had a butsudan, and I had a whole altar set up, which I still have.
Mhm.
So, I've had a very, I guess, flavorful journey with Buddhism, but I,
Mhm.
I consider myself practicing because I don't think you ever get it right.
Yes.
It's, so it's, like therapy in a way. It's a process and
Yeah.
it's a practice and it's a relationship that we all have to continue to nurture,
Mhm.
whether
Exactly.
it's your meditation practice, whatever practice, whatever journey
Mhm.
people choose.
Mhm.
It's about coming back to it, right? Coming back to your
Absolutely.
cushion, or coming back to your mat, or
Yeah,
coming back to your altar, whatever the case may be.
that's right.
Um, yeah. So it's something I'm working on.
That's so beautiful. And you did mention your choir and how, that was part of your, it sounds like, practice too, to some regard. How
Mhm.
did you first realize that you had this astonishing voice? Like, did you know it or were you told it? Like, did you have like a light bulb that went off like, "Oh wow, my voice is actually exceptional." Or was it just kind of the slow movement in?
It's funny, and I talk about this in my book as well, is, growing up with trauma,
Mhm.
growing up in an alcoholic, dysfunctional family,
Yeah.
the mantra that was going off in my head most of the time was I wasn't good enough.
Wow.
And so I never felt like I had a great voice. I never felt like, oh, a fabulous singer or anything. I think what happened for me was singing in the church choir, singing in little musical productions, as a child. Um, I got a lot of affirmation. People
Mhm.
would say to me, "Oh, you have a beautiful voice. Oh, you sound great." And that started to give me a sense of validation and
Mhm.
approval. And it kind of made me feel like, oh, well, maybe I have something to contribute.
Mhm.
Maybe I am somebody. Maybe I do have something to offer. But underneath that was the drone of, but I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
And that drone that I think probably a lot of people with trauma
Yes.
can identify with is that became sort of the fire in my belly to
Mhm.
always want to push myself to be better, to push myself to be good enough,
Yeah.
to push myself to accomplish things. Um, on one hand, it can be a positive force, but on the
Mhm.
other hand, it's also what in Buddhism they call the hungry ghost.
Exactly, yeah.
And
Mhm.
and so my hunger for wanting approval, for wanting success, wanting,
Mhm.
um, was, the trauma, the injury, the heartache that pushed that along, that was
Yeah.
kept that hungry ghost alive.
Totally.
And I still have to kind of check in with myself when I feel, um, the cravings for certain things, whether it's approval or um, whatever, you
Yeah.
know.
I think it'll be really useful for our viewers to hear how you catch yourself because I have a chapter in my book too called the overcompetent override. And it's this thing that I think we all have to face in order to move from survival to thriving, which is like, are we in a constant override to keep our core wound at bay, right? And and it sounds like, because of your core wound of not feeling good enough, it just sounds like you so eloquently said yourself that your singing career became this override. Like, if I do this, I'll be good enough, I'll be accepted enough, but it never healed the core wound.
Absolutely.
Is that a fair statement?
Totally. Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's, until you really get to the core of
Mm,
the injury, the emotional, spiritual injuries, there is always that voice, that hungry voice,
mhm.
um, that's kind of driving you. And you
Yeah.
may not even realize that that's the thing that's driving you, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
And so in that first MDMA journey, despite all the talk therapy, is that the moment, like you said in the beginning, that you realized that that hungry voice was still there? The drive was
Oh,
still
absolutely.
there. Mm,
Absolutely. That little girl that part of me that got left
mhm,
behind
mhm.
was yeah, was not taken care of,
Yeah.
and I had to go back and get her and 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 heal that wound and integrate her back into my heart and my being, so to say, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, that whole, finding your authentic self and um, figuring out the disjointed, fragmented parts of oneself that have not been integrated and not taken care of is the work, right?
Absolutely.
That is the work. And yeah, and it's a long process, and here I am, I'm about to be 70 years
Wow.
old in
Amazing. You look incredible.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, but it's real, time is moving. Um and it's taken me a lot of years of
Mm,
working on myself, and honestly it really wasn't until I found the psychedelic assisted therapy process and sort of addition to my regular talk therapy, um, did I feel like, okay, now I'm getting the puzzle pieces and, putting it together finally,
Yeah, absolutely. It sure sounds
Yeah.
like it. And the fact that you put this book out into the world, sharing with the world your core vulnerabilities too. I mean, talk about
Yeah.
courage. And I think it's important we discuss courage for a piece, because there are a lot of people that feel that they are doing the work, and definitely hats out to them. But
Of
it
course.
certainly takes a new stage, a new level of courage to know there's always more work to be done and to dig deeper.
Yeah.
And that's what psychedelic medicine is, right? Like, talk therapy is beautiful and wonderful, and we all need a witness, in my opinion, of our life.
Yes.
But the psychedelic therapy really does dig up things that are unconscious to us.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and not to say that you can't do it, like it's not to say you can't do the work
Mhm.
without psychedelic assistance, but there is a magic. There is a magic to the medicine. And it's why, indigenous cultures, primitive cultures have been using medicine work for centuries,
Okay.
right? I mean, there's an incredible history with this work. It's not like all of a sudden the Grateful Dead made it happen or something, it's
That's right,
no,
yeah.
this is ancient medicine work that finally, hopefully, surprisingly, this current administration actually signed an executive
Right.
order last week,
That's right, right.
approving further research. So maybe finally it will be legalized.
Yeah.
Because there's so many people in pain right now
Yep.
in the world, and so many people that could benefit from this work.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
That's one of the reasons why I started this podcast, is because I think the integration of the Buddhists and the Asian communities into the psychedelic movement and healing trauma movement is vital. I mean, it's a third of our world or half of our world. And
Yeah.
and there's a lot of misinterpretations of one of the well, basically, if we view the Buddhist words of not ingesting intoxicants as a literal translation, right? There's a lot of Buddhist practitioners that believe they can't take and ingest psychedelic medicine. But if we interpret those words through intentionality, right, which is, I
Yes.
believe, the Buddhist message, then if we ingest for the intention of healing, that is still being aligned with as a practicing Buddhist. So I'm just
Uh-huh.
curious for you, did you ever have any like moral dilemma with ingesting intoxicants as a Buddhist, or was that never anything that you struggled with?
No, listen, I grew up on the tail end of the hippie generation. And, um, when I was a teenager, it was sort of the tail end of the Beatles bringing spirituality, Eastern philosophy to America. It
Right.
was the sort of the tail end of, I toured with Pink Floyd, but it was much later when they first came on the scene, psychedelic rock, psychedelic music was a thing, and the drug culture was a thing,
Mhm.
back in the 60s and 70s. So, to be very honest, when I was a teenager, listen, I tried smoking pot, I tried acid. I don't
Mhm.
recommend it for someone so young.
Yeah.
Thankfully I survived, that because it was pretty crazy. But, and I think also growing up in an alcoholic family, I was exposed to that behavior. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, I never had a question about taking intoxicants. I'm sorry to say.
Yeah, no, I think that's fantastic because now we we get to ask you about recreational versus intentional use of psychedelics,
Yes.
right? And
Yes. Yeah.
especially because you toured with Pink Floyd. I mean, Pink Floyd is almost like the archetypal musical soundtrack, right? For any
Yeah.
psychedelic journey. So, I mean, it's
Yeah.
almost the representation of what you should take, at least with acid. So,
Yeah.
so I would love to hear, and the viewers I'm sure would love to hear, how do you view recreational use of taking these kind of psychedelic medicines versus an intention setting with the psychedelic guide?
Yeah. Well, my point of view on all of that has uh, drastically changed, because I don't do drugs recreationally. I haven't done drugs recreationally since probably 1989, 1990, something like
Oh,
that.
oh, good for you.
Yeah, maybe before that. Um, when I toured with Pink Floyd, it was 1987, 88. There was a lot of cocaine everywhere, a lot of pills and drinking, and it was, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. So, you know, um, I had my share. I had my share of fun back then. However, now, at this point in my life, and because I've done medicine work, I have great respect for the process of doing medicine work. Um, I think set and setting is very important.
Mhm.
Um, and also, we're living in a very different era. There's
Yeah.
a lot of drugs out there, street drugs that are being cut with fentanyl.
Yes.
It's very dangerous. I have a very good friend who lost his daughter to
Yeah.
fentanyl, and it was not that she took fentanyl.
Uh,
She and her friends got um, oxycodone, off the
Oh,
street, and it
no.
was cut with fentanyl, and she died. So I'm very scared for young people now. It was a very different scene, when I was young.
Mm,
So, yeah, so I don't do recreational uh drugs anymore. I mean, I'd like to have a glass of wine here and there,
mhm.
but yeah. So,
Thank you for speaking to that. You have
yeah.
such wise words for that, and I think the viewers really need to hear from someone who was really heavy in the party scene at a certain point and why you choose
Hmm.
the intentional path. I think that's vitally important. And
Yes.
I also have another question for you because what I've noticed when I've provided journeys to folks, and obviously ketamine's the only legal molecule we have right now,
Yeah.
um, the music is so vital in these journey sessions, and the synesthesia can happen. And I've
Hmm.
noticed with my musical genius kind of clients that the music is extra, extra, extra either annoying or profound. And so I wanted to know your opinion of that because, as we're trained, we definitely want to use music with psychedelic journeyers. But
Yes.
how do you handle that? Having such an, auditory acuity to sound and being such a musical genius yourself, how did you handle the music setting in your psychedelic journeys?
That's an interesting question, and I'm not a musical genius, but thank you. But I don't
Your voice
consider me.
sure sounds like it is. Let's just say that.
Well, thank you. That's very sweet. But um,
Mhm,
yeah, it's interesting. I when I've done journeys, the person I work with plays the music, or she will play the gong,
mhm,
and use other little instruments live. But I've noticed there have been times when I've heard recorded music. It depends on what was playing. Sometimes it really deepens the process for me, and it's really fantastic and beautiful. But then there are moments where it's agitating,
yeah,
and it can be really, yeah, just really agitating and kind of throws me off. So it
mhm,
really depends, and I think probably it depends on the medicine.
mhm,
Um, because MDMA, it's not really hallucinogenic, right? It's an
right,
ethnologic medicine.
right.
It's not really a psychedelic experience. So to me, MDMA, you could play anything. It's all going to be beautiful. It's like, yeah, okay. um, right. Everything's beautiful then. But I mean, that's not true because you can have, you know, um,
Sure.
for your listeners, if they don't
Mhm.
know, MDMA, it's an ethnologic feeling. So it's a love drug. They call it the love drug because it is very heart opening, but it doesn't mean that you're not going to experience sadness or experience your trauma. Because for me, that was my first journey, and all my trauma came up from my
Yeah,
childhood. But what
right.
happens is you're able to kind of hold those feelings in a very almost objective kind of way. So you
Mm,
can look at it, you can work. At least for me, I was able to work with that stuff and work with those feelings, but not get so overwhelmed. I
yeah,
was able to really be with the feelings and work with it.
yeah.
It's yeah, it's difficult to describe.
Explain it until you
Yeah,
experience it, right? Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
obviously,
yeah.
the science is that it softens the amygdala, which is
Yes,
our fear center, basically, and so we can look at a trauma head on without having our brain highlight fear, and
right.
And for parts work, right, our protectors step back and we can actually
Yes,
witness our little 4.5-year-old self without blending
yes,
in with her. And sometimes
exactly.
in talk therapy, we feel all the feelings of 4.5, we can't separate, or it's
Right.
even hard to find 4.5-year-old self.
Exactly. Yeah, it's working just sort of disconnecting the default mode network and all of that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Anyway, I kind of went off on a tangent, but,
No, thank you for explaining
but
that to the viewers, and
yeah,
it might help them know too if you've had a different experience with different types of psychedelics when it comes to healing.
totally. Yeah. Psilocybin for me is, it's much heavier, because it is hallucinogenic and it does
Mhm,
sort of take you, um, on a sort of a different, deeper journey. Um, but I've had the ego dissolution and going back to primordial times and really kind of being broken down in a sense, but in a really good way. Um,
mhm,
and I just think it's all very valuable. But truthfully, I have not done ketamine. So
mhm,
I don't know. A friend of mine does that work. She's a therapist in Woodstock, New York, and it is legal here, obviously. So yeah, I'm meaning to try it. Um, but I've had very good success with MDMA and psilocybin. So
yeah, of course, and it's
yeah.
always good to stick with molecule you know works really well in your system.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say ketamine has been profound for 80 to 90% of people have some profound experiences with ketamine. It's not for everyone. But the
Mm,
synesthesia in the medium dose to higher dose range is really common with ketamine. And so that's why I
mm,
was curious if you had tried that with music, knowing your musical ear, you know? So
mm.
it would be interesting to hear if you someday do try ketamine and how you compare it to
Yes.
MDMA and psilocybin for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I do. I want to try it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So, how many sessions until you got to this point, psilocybin or MDMA sessions,
Mhm.
until you got to this point where you're like, "You know what? I need to write my story. I need to share my story with the world." When did that
Hmm.
happen?
Well, um, I started writing my book about 3 years ago, and I don't know if that's a really interesting thought because I hadn't connected my medicine work to me writing the book. Because several people had said to me prior to me even doing medicine work that they thought it was a good idea for me to write a book. And for a long time, I was like, who care? Who would care? And
Oh, wow.
why? Oh no, honestly, that's how I felt. I'm like, well, nobody's going to be interested, and blah blah blah. But I just started journaling, and then the journaling started to evolve into stories that ended up being my book. But yeah, probably the medicine work has helped me to take ownership of my story and to also have a different perspective on my story. Because as you know, it's not about your story.
Exactly.
It's really about, the internal work and dealing with the trauma and dealing with the emotional fabric of who you are, right?
That's right. Well, so
Yeah.
beautifully well said. Emotional
Well, thank
fabric.
you.
Yeah, so beautifully well said. And I think it's really important, again, for viewers that are listening, that a story like yours is really, really, really important for those of you out in the world that are like thriving and really successful and have had a good career, or you have a really happy life and family and kids, and yet you still
Mm,
feel this undercurrent that something is just unsatisfying, or you feel down on yourself, or you feel like you're not good enough, and you've been doing
yeah.
talk therapy for years, and that still hasn't shifted. I think it's vitally important that you hear someone's story that has had that level of success, that still went and did this deeper work to feel that
Mhm.
liberation and that freedom to share your story with others. So thank you for writing your book. I don't know how many people thank you, but really, it's a story that needs to be told. And like I said to you, I've only gotten through the first 2 chapters, and of course, I love the whale story. Um, But I think it's important that because everyone's story is important to tell. But like
Yes.
you said, the fabric of your story, the cohesion of bringing it all together. It's not about the content or the event when you were 4.5 or the event when you took your psychedelics. It's the fabric of your essence that makes you who you are. And we all have that.
Yes.
And we all
Yes.
get to share it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's all important, it's this is really to me the stuff that we as humans should be connecting on. When I chose the title of my book, at first I
Mhm.
thought, maybe this is too weird. But then when I settled on Naked Out Loud, um, my feeling is that we all, as humans, need to figure out a way to tell our truth, be willing to be vulnerable, be willing to share with each other um, our human story, our humanness,
Mhm.
rather than just living with our personas, hiding um, the reality of who we are, which is which is really kind of more the trend right now, especially with social media, with the
Yeah.
internet. I teach at NYU in New York, and I see with a lot of university kids and younger
Mhm.
kids that are so caught up in the social media stuff that it's really given them anxiety, a lot of
Yes.
anxiety and emotional distress because you want to keep up and with everyone else
Mhm.
and impress everybody with your new post and whatever it is, your new
Yeah.
music video or whatever's going on for you. And I feel like with AI coming or happening, it's not coming, it's here.
Mhm.
And as we become more and more caught up in technology and these ways of separating ourselves from human relationship and human contact, I think we're going to have to fight
Yes.
to stay connected as a species, as human creatures,
Yes.
and to stay connected to our emotional and spiritual truth.
Mhm.
That's one thing that AI and technology cannot take away from us
That's right.
if we hold on to that. And I think we have to fight to hold on to that, our truth as human creatures.
So what you just shared is exactly why, again, your story is so vital because you've had the front and center imagery out in the world. Like if your career was happening 10 years ago to now, if you were in the apex of your career, you'd be all over social media, right? There'd be millions of followers. You'd have all of these videos and images and everyone would be like wanting to copy you and yet that wouldn't have taken away that undercurrent of not feeling good enough. And I think that's really important for your NYU students and anyone else that's that age, 16 to 30 years old, is here you have someone that would have had 2 million followers. I have no idea how many followers you have now, but but the point being is your front and center persona would have been
Hmm.
highly sought after, right? In the
Yeah.
social media
Yeah.
world. Do you agree with that at least?
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's what everybody's striving for is how many likes can I get? How many followers can I get? I mean, that's how the world is working now. Even business is working that way. It's crazy.
That's
But
right.
that's the state of the world. Yeah.
It's the state of the world, which is why we need everyone to get into their fabric, like you described, that essence of who each person is. And I really believe in energy, and I believe AI is helping us get enough information into our human brains so that we can eventually start becoming more spiritually focused.
Hmm.
That's my
Hmm.
hopeful message about AI, right? That
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
it could go in either direction, but I'd like to stay
Yeah.
hopeful that AI can give us all we need so that we can now become more focused on what is really true, our state of
Yes.
presence, our state of being, and being a spiritual being in a human form body.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I hope so. From your mouth to God's ears, as they
Yes.
say.
Right, right, exactly. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So, but getting back to your book and your imagery out in the world now, you've already had success, but now you've written this vulnerable book. Have you noticed a difference at all? I don't know how long your book's been out now, but have you noticed a difference of how people respond to you?
How they respond to me? Yeah, well, the people that have friends that have read my book, um, that, come back to me, they say, "Wow, I didn't realize what was going on for you, your story behind your story, behind your career." I have friends that have said, "Wow, I never knew this about you." They're learning new things about me, which is really interesting. But I think really the more important point is it's changed for me
Mm,
because something very cathartic happened with the process of writing the book. And then the next step of that process happened once the book got published, which just happened in December. It came out. Um, I don't know. It was like a big letting go for me. It's a
mhm.
huge sense of release for me and relief, I think, release and relief to just let it go.
Nice.
Let the story go. It's like, that's my story and it's okay, you know, because the story's not important to me
Yeah.
anymore, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so beautiful. That is a really beautiful story that by telling your story, you got to let go of your story.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
something really powerful. And even, it's not like everybody has to put out a book, but I
Mhm.
think if you write if you journal, if you write, if you, there is scientific evidence that if you put pen to paper or
Sure,
if
yeah.
you actually read a book, something happens in the neuropathology, the connections in the brain,
Mhm.
which is connected to the heart and connected to your body. There's something very healing that happens
Yeah.
with that process. So even if you're just journaling about your story, it could be really powerful.
Absolutely. And then
Yeah.
sometimes based on what someone's core wound is, they might need a witness to still read it.
Yeah.
Sometimes we can just read our own journaling, and sometimes we need a witness, whether it's just a friend or a stranger, read
Yes.
our story.
Yeah. And thus the power of therapy.
The power
Right?
of therapy and the
Yeah.
power of the Sangha in Buddhism, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can't
Yes.
like, the Buddhist path, you can't do it alone, you still need the Sangha.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. Yeah, it's all
Yeah.
connected.
It's all connected. Therapy, Sangha, I love it. I love it very much, yeah.
Medicine.
And then medicine-assisted therapy, right?
Yeah.
We need the co-regulation, right?
Yeah.
So we need
Yes.
self-regulation and co-regulation. Yeah.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
so so coming to where you're at now. So here you are, you wrote your book and you're a professor and you still tour too, right?
A little bit. I do some gigs. It's funny. The Pink Floyd thing has been the gift that keeps on giving because, I toured with them in 1987, 88. It's quite some time ago. It's actually, I realized recently it's going to be 40 years next year.
Wow,
So I know
amazing.
it's crazy. It's amazing. Um, but I've gotten over the years, I get these calls to come as a guest vocalist or a guest artist with Pink Floyd tribute bands all over the world. It's really wild. So I've done a lot of those gigs all over Europe, in America. I've been to South America too. And that also goes for my bandmates who I toured with. They also get these calls to come be a guest artist with these different groups. So it's the gift that keeps on giving. It's really funny.
Is your relationship to it different now that you've identified
Oh,
how your
yeah.
4.5-year-old needed to heal?
Yes, completely. Completely different. For a long time, even though I was doing all these fantastic tours in the past and these great gigs, and I had a really, really lovely run as a background vocalist on those big tours, at that time, it was hard for me to own it
Mhm.
because of how I was feeling internally. But
Yeah.
now I can own it. Now I can look back and say, "Yeah, I did that. I did that, and it was good." It
Amazing.
took
And
me.
do you now say extraordinary, like, to when you're talking to 4.5-year-old you? Like, do you really just say, "It was good," or do you say, like, "Wow, you're amazing. Your voice is extraordinary."
I still have trouble saying that, but I can own it though. I can own it, what I did in my career and how wonderful it was, and how, I'm still having fun doing some of those gigs. So yeah. Yeah.
I could be projecting here, it could be speculation, but I am super curious about you singing in Japanese as, like, for your 4.5-year-old self. Have you done that?
Oh, no. No, that's really interesting.
Yeah,
No,
I
I
mean,
haven't
even if
done
it's
that.
like a lullaby song, I'm just so curious what would happen to your inner landscape, even when
Huh.
you're under psychedelic medicine, if you sing in Japanese. It's just a thought,
Wow.
it's just a hypothesis, because it's
That's an
really deep in your
interesting.
brain. The first 4.5
Yeah,
years you spoke Japanese.
that's right. Yeah, it's there. It's definitely there. That's interesting. I don't know. I'll let you know
Yeah,
next
you
time.
please let me know if you do sing Japanese. I just would love
Yeah.
to know how it feels for you internally. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, it's funny when I do speak Japanese a little bit,
Mhm.
it's very, very familiar. It
Yeah.
feels very much a part of me. And even though I only have a vocabulary of a 4.5-year-old, um, yeah, it's a part of me for sure.
Totally.
Even though,
Right.
Karen, I spent a lot of years when I was younger trying to deny that part of myself,
Right. And your
you
family
know.
told you to deny it. Your 2 parents told you to deny it.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
because they wanted me to assimilate. They wanted
Right.
me to be American, right? Which I
Mhm.
understood, and I understand that they wanted me to feel comfortable and accepted in
Mm.
America.
Yeah, of
Except
course.
there's no hiding this face. There's no
Right.
hiding. There is no hiding, my features. Even though internally I felt like I was trying to hide, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
are your parents? I'm assuming your parents are not living, or are they
They're
still
gone. They're
okay.
they're gone. Both of them. Yeah.
Did
Yeah,
you
no, my dad died when he was 66 years old, so I was in my
mm,
20s when he
oh,
passed, and my
sorry.
mother passed in 2017. So she lived to be almost 94.
Oh,
So
wow.
she had a good long life. Yeah. Yeah.
How do you think they would feel about your book being out?
Oh, wow. My mother probably would not be comfortable with it.
Mhm.
Um I talk about it actually in my book, how there is this Japanese concept of saving face,
Yes.
that it's embarrassing in that culture and almost and disrespectful um to your family or to your elders or to your partners or whoever, to divulge too much personal information like that, like I've done. So I think my mother would probably not be okay.
Oh, so
Um, yeah, but
mm.
oddly, I think she'd be proud on the other hand,
Mhm, mhm.
it was a mixed bag with my mom because my mother was a singer when she was young. in Japan,
Oh,
which is how she
wow.
met my father. My mother was singing in after the war, she was singing in little jazz trios, jazz bands.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
yeah, my whole Japanese side of the family, they were all musicians. Um, and my father was managing the officers club on the army base in Yokohama that my mother was singing in, and that's how they met.
Oh, wow. I
So
see.
music is what brought them together, you know.
Oh, amazing.
I know.
Wow.
It's such a Hollywood story, you know.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I forgot what I was going to say about that.
Well,
But
you're answering the question though, because it sounds like even despite your mom maybe not being comfortable with this, that shows another layer of your healing that you knew to take care of yourself and 4.5-year-old by telling your story, even if you would have made your mom uncomfortable in spirit or
yeah,
in living form.
yeah, I guess. Oh, the thing I was going to say was, when I started pursuing music and having a career in music, it was a double-edged sword for my mother because I think she was also envious because she
Oh,
never got to fulfill that part of her life and her career, her story. But she was also proud. I know she was
yeah.
also proud of my accomplishments. But I think it was hard for her,
Sure.
because coming to America meant she gave up her career, she gave up her family in
Mhm.
Japan, she gave up her culture, she gave up everything to come
Even
to
her own
America.
mom sounds she didn't even go visit her own mom.
Only once, yeah,
Wow.
when she was gonna pass away. But
Mm.
yeah, so anyway, I'm kind of glad that my parents are not here right now because I think it would have been really hard for them.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. How about your
yeah.
sister?
My older sister read my book and she had a lot of really lovely things to say and yeah, she didn't know. She didn't know a lot of my inner story. So it was actually really beautiful that my older sister read the book and
Mm.
um felt felt a lot of compassion for, what I shared. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Really, really
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we only have a couple minutes left, and I want to
Mhm.
respect your time. But I'm curious if like 4.5-year-old right now could say something,
Mm.
what would she want the viewers to know?
Oh, wow. That it's so important to take care of that inner child and um because she got left behind. My little girl got left behind and
Mhm.
um she's so happy. She's so grateful that I went back to rescue her and reconnect with her. Um, but how important those beginning years of life are, and it's documented science, it's documented psychology. Those first 5 years are crucial.
Yeah.
So I think everybody needs to kind of go back and see how their little person is doing and have they
Mhm.
taken care of that part of themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah.
wise. And
Well,
how about for
because it
you?
stays it
Uh-huh.
well that part stays alive, doesn't it? In
That's
all
right.
of us. Yeah. It's not like it goes away or they go away. That part of us is with us.
And even when we heal, it's still he still stays with us just in a different way.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So anything else you'd like to share overall with our viewers? It could be anything at all, any topic at all, whether it's trauma, psychedelics, Buddhism, your journey, your book.
Yeah, I think I've been thinking about this recently, and I think, as I'm looking down the road here to September this year of turning 70,
Wow.
it's crazy. When I turned 60, it was really hard that this last decade, I was sort of kicking and screaming internally, like, oh my God, I'm getting old. And I struggled, but again, I think the medicine work and I think all this stuff that I've been doing has really helped me to just take ownership and of who I am, where I'm at. Um, so my message, I guess, is it's never too late. It is
Yeah.
never too late to take care of yourself, to do the work, to speak your truth. Go back to school. I didn't get my bachelor's degree and master's degree until I was in my 50s. So,
Oh, good for you.
yeah, that's how I got my job finally at NYU. So the point is, it's never too late. As long as you're living and breathing and you're here, it's never too late.
Mm. So wise, Machan. I really hope everyone really just felt your words, not just heard them, but felt them. It's
Oh,
never too
thank
late.
you.
And that's actually the Buddhist
Yeah.
path too, is up until the moment we take our last breath, it's never too late.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly. Because every day is a gift that we're here in this human form, right?
Mm.
Who knows what happens later? I mean, I do believe in reincarnation, but nobody's come back to tell me that, oh yeah, it's really going to happen.
Right.
So, yeah,
Well, we'll
it's
all
a
find out.
gift.
Yeah.
Yes, but it is a gift. It's a gift that we're here.
Well, Machan, it's been an incredible gift to interview you with
Thank
all of your
you.
knowledge and again, your courage to do this deep healing and share yourself with the world in such a deep way.
Thank
That
you.
is a true gift. So I want to
Thank you
thank
so much.
you. And for the viewers, there will be a link to Machan's website and her book on the episode notes, so you'll be able to find out more about her. And I'm sure
Thank
you can
you.
YouTube her and find her incredible voice online, which is just extraordinary. And
Thank you.
with that, we will stop our episode of Trauma, Psychedelics, and Buddhism. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Trauma, Psychedelics, and Buddhism with Karen Sprinkel. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. To learn more or to grab your copy of The Thriving Self, visit KarenSprinkel.com. Karen and this podcast do not endorse or encourage the illegal use of psychedelics.